guys, welcome back to my channel. This is LaQuinta, also known as Q, and I'm going to be reading chapters 2 and chapters 3 of Escape. So stay tuned, listen up. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks. Chapter 2, Domenic. After the clink of the glasses, each man lifted a glass to his mouth and drank. I watched them all. I knew all Ricky wanted to do was go home. He had looked at his cell phone way too many times. He seemed so preoccupied lately, but he knew there was only one way out of this, and since he had a kid on the way, I knew he would be willing to stick it out. Carl and Steve weren't going anywhere. They were the kind of guys that would follow me to the ends of the earth. All I had to do was treat them decent. And then there was Martin, my dude. I had such high hopes for him. He stood there with the guys, con una sonrisa grande. But I knew he wished he could be anywhere but standing where he was with his old pretty ass. He was the only dude in my crew who was as clean as I was. He stood there looking like he was just leaving a board meeting. I saw him fidget and look down at his wrists, one of the few people who still wore watches. He said, "Thanks for the drink, but I gotta go." He stepped over to me and shook my hand and leaned in for an embrace. "No hay problema, man," I replied. I watched as he made his rounds, and just before he stepped out of the room, I said, "Don't forget, tomorrow, your last job." He peeled off a smile so bright it could have blinded us all. He nodded and exited the room as Carl followed close behind to let him out. I looked at Steve. He could tell from my expression that I needed to speak to Ricky alone, so he left. I prepared 2 more drinks. "I'm good, actually. Tengo que irme," he informed me. I tilted my head to the left. "So, it's like that now? You don't ask anymore, you just tell me when you're leaving?" He smiled, sort of uneasy. "Well, do you need anything else?" he asked. He was annoyed, but he kept a cool face. "Toma." I handed him a drink. He looked at it momentarily, then gulped it back. "Tomorrow, make sure it's Martin's last job ever," I said. For a minute, he stood there, mirándome. "Hay una problema?" I asked. "Come on, Domenic, it's Martin. You know, you just said you liked him like he was your brother. He's a good dude." "He is, and so are you. Pero, rules are rules." "Rules," he said, then nodded. "As you wish." He added and walked off. "Make it dignified. He deserves that much," I said. He paused, then continued out the door. I poured myself another drink. Shit, I needed one. Chapter 3, Ricky. I couldn't wait to get out of Dominic's place, man. I had my Bluetooth in. I called my girl as soon as I got into my ride. She answered. "Hola, mi amor," she said with sleep in her voice. "Hi, Mommy. I'm on my way home. I'll see you in a few, okay? I just have to make a quick stop." "Okay, baby," she replied, and the call ended. I had a picture of us taped on the dash, half Cuban for her mother and half white for her father. But if you looked at her, you would have thought she was just a gringa. Her hair golden blonde, her eyes soft blue. But she had this beautiful tint to her complexion and this smile that would make you do anything. We were expecting our first child, and here I was engaged in this crazy bullshit with no way out. I drove down Walltown Street to this place I knew had some great tacos. When I pulled up to the parking lot, I saw Martin's Honda parked a few spaces down. I knew this was my chance to do something right. Something to get him out of this mess I introduced him to. I remembered how we met about a year ago. He worked part-time as a barber at this new spot that had just opened up. I really didn't even look like a shop, more like a house. And when I walked into the spot, all the barbers had a person in their seat except for him. But there were people waiting, but not for him. This guy, Mr. Rob, older preacher type, stood at the lead chair. "Do you have an appointment with someone?" he asked. This guy has to be a preacher, I thought. Even the way he said that sounded like he was about to go into full sermon mode. "No, sir," I replied. "You could give Martin a try." He pointed at him. He sat in his barber chair, looking at his cell phone. He immediately looked up at me when Mr. Rob said his name. He was the only barber in there besides the preacher man, who was dressed in slacks and a nice shirt. The guy in the next chair to him joked, "Yeah, oh, Martin's fresh out of barber school. He'll have you looking real right." Judging from his hair and the shape up of his beard, he had to be nice. Well, that is if he did his own cuts. I had a good feeling about it, so I walked over to him and shook his hand. "I'm Ricardo, but everyone calls me Ricky." "Have a seat," he replied. After he finished my cut, let's just say all those dudes that were waiting on the other barbers were now waiting on Martin. As I walked up to the taco truck to order, I saw him sitting at one of the little makeshift plastic tables. I acknowledged him and continued up to the front of the truck. I saw my dude Luis at the helm. I knew those tacos were going to be good. I could smell the aroma and my stomach dance in anticipation of the first bite. "¿Qué pasa, hombre?" he said as he stood behind the counter dressed in a blue polo-style shirt. "Nada, hombre," I replied, "just trying to get some of these amazing tacos. Give me 2 orders, uno de pollo, otro de res." Looking at Luis, you would think he was Cambodian, not Mexican. He had this deep brown skin and straight jet black hair. He replied to his wife standing at the grill, "Dos órdenes, pollo y res." "Gracias," I replied as I gathered my salsas and waited for my order. A few minutes later, he handed it to me, and I walked over to where Martin sat. "Mind if I sit here?" I asked. He motioned for me to sit. I placed my food down carefully and took a seat. He had a look of relief and joy on his face. "Whew, one more job," he said and bit into his last taco. I nodded. It's hard to look a man in the eyes knowing that the worst is about to befall him and not being able to say anything. I felt like shit. Martin was a good dude. He lived with his grandmother to help take care of her and coached the basketball and track team in his spare time. He was a role model, not just some basic dude. He needed a break, and it was time for him to get one. Look, I had done a lot of bad shit to get where I was. I figured God would take some leniency on me if I did this one thing. He had to, right? "Look, Martin, tomorrow will be your last job," I said plainly. He gave me that look that people do when you repeat something to them they've already said. "I know, man, that's what I just said," he replied and took a sip of his drink. "No, tomorrow will be your last job, ever." Then I bit into my taco. The meat was seasoned so good, and as I sat there enjoying the sabor, I could see his entire world crumbling before me. "How you just gonna say some shit like that and eat a taco?" he huffed. "Tacos are good, man, and I'm hungry," I replied. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead and nose. He fidgeted. "So, you're telling me this? I shouldn't show up tomorrow, right?" I stopped eating for a moment. "No, you should definitely show up." Then I ate another taco. His face was confused. "So why are you telling me this?" he asked in desperation. "Because I want to help you, Martin. Martin Evans will die tomorrow, but his body will resurface somewhere else as someone else," I said. Then I ate the rest of the taco. "But my grandmother, who's going to take care of her? Whether you die for real or die for fake, someone will take care of your grandmother." He cringed at the thought, but the reality of it was true. If you run, your grandmother will die. Your brother and his family will die, and eventually you will die. The silence spoke volumes. I give you my word. I'll ensure your grandmother is well taken care of, but she can never know of your whereabouts. I don't even want to know. So, how do we do this? He asked. I smiled. That is a question I have been waiting for you to ask, my friend.